Your 20s are the first time you have some proper disposable income, some real money. And what you do with that money is really difficult. Do you spend it irresponsibly on luxurious things, or do you invest it for the future, for a future of financial freedom? I turned 29 just a couple of weeks ago, and the answer is it's a bit of both. And so in this video, I want to share with you what my favorite purchases have been from the past decade of my life. Welcome back, and if you're new here, I'm Kieran Panchal, and here on this channel, I help you navigate the crazy decade that is your 20s. So if you're trying to figure out life just like me, consider joining me on this journey by subscribing down below. Now, my favorite top number one purchase throughout my 20s is one of these, a camera. Now, I actually own three of these. I own the camera that we're recording this video on. I own this camera, which is a Sony a5000, which was the first camera I ever bought. And I have another camera which I use for streaming. And I think the reason why I think a camera is so important is that it's just allowed me to capture those moments and memories that I otherwise might have forgotten. Now, some of those big events like birthdays and weddings and stuff, you kind of always remember because there's a big faff about them. But I found that using my camera to capture those small kind of everyday things like, trying out a new recipe or going on a day trip just means that there's so many more memories that I'll remember in 20, 30, 40 years down the line that maybe I otherwise would have forgotten. And the thing is, taking photos is easier than it has ever been. We've all got phones in our pockets with amazing, amazing cameras. But I've just found by actually having a specific dedicated camera, I'm just a little bit more intentional about how I take photos, which means that I actually find myself appreciating the moment and what's going on a little better, rather than just quickly whipping out my phone and just taking a quick snap. Actually trying to compose a proper photo, get people involved in a photo, take photos of people's emotions and feelings has really helped me kind of understand and appreciate moments. And I'm so looking forward to, as I said, in 20, 30, 40 years time, looking back at all of these memories and just having a great time, just reminiscing about all those amazing experiences I had with my friends and family. And so that's why my favorite purchase from my 20s is the camera, and why I think you guys should definitely buy one if you haven't already. Okay, so the second purchase I made in my 20s that I do not regret at all is using some of this money, this hard-earned money, to spend on traveling. Now, I've been fortunate to travel around North America, Far East Asia, a lot of Europe, both on my own and with groups of friends, and it is absolutely something that has been really formative for me, at least in my 20s, something I definitely do not regret. Now, going solo traveling is sometimes a little bit daunting, you're going into a new place that you don't know at all on your own, and it can be a bit scary, and I definitely felt like that too. But I've actually found that when I went solo traveling, that people were so accommodating. I literally came across strangers, and people were so helpful. People were helping me kind of find places, even going with them. And it was just an amazing experience that I don't think I would have had doing anything else, watching movies, watching videos or whatever. There's just no substitute for going to a different place and experiencing the culture, the way those people live. And so if you haven't traveled too much, it is definitely something that is worth your money. I've had some fantastic experiences, and I'm looking forward to traveling more in my 30s as well. But traveling is just one of those things you have to do in your 20s. My next favorite purchase in my 20s is actually quite an irresponsible one, and that is to spend money on kind of luxurious things that you haven't had the opportunity to before. Now, for me, that was designer stuff. I have a Louis Vuitton bag, and also it was to get into trainers. I was actually kind of making a bit of a sideline reselling, but after that I kind of stopped doing that and I kind of just collected trainers. This is one of my favorite trainers, is the Oreo 350 V2s. And I started collecting this kind of stuff just because I had a bit of money. I was being fortunate enough to live at home, and so I was able to save more and have a bit more disposable income. And the reason I say this is a good purchase in your 20s is because at some point, you are going to want to kind of splash out on something luxurious. Now, even if you're not like a fashion person or a shoe person, there will be that kind of hobby or interest you have where there's that kind of higher end thing that maybe you'd always wanted but never been able to access. And so I think it's really important in your 20s that you do kind of get some of that out of your system and actually buy those few things you want. Because one thing I've realized throughout my 20s is, spending money on this stuff, all of this type of stuff was great, but I don't really wear these shoes anymore because they're not that comfortable and I'm afraid of them getting wet. And so actually, you know what? I've got it all out of my system now. And actually my £50 Adidas shoes that I wear all the time are actually the ones that I get the most use out of. And so now that I think I've got it out of my system, I feel more prepared going into my 30s to make like better financial decisions when it comes to everyday things like clothes and household appliances and all of that type of stuff. But I do think it's really, really important in your 20s to get those kind of impulse or luxury buys out of your system, just so you know that actually maybe that is what you want and you can, work as hard as you need to buy those things for yourself in the future. Or actually, you know what, it doesn't actually bring you that much joy and happiness, but you've got it out of your system so you can, feel happy in yourself that you at least got those things that you wanted, and then you can kind of move on making smarter financial decisions in the future. The next purchase I made throughout my 20s that I think was one of the most important was to start investing and saving regularly. Now, we all know about the importance of compounding, right? The earlier you start investing and the more consistent you are with investing, the greater the return is whenever you cash out, in your 60s, 70s, 80s. But I think the most important thing about kind of financial investing and savings is around just getting into those habits, getting into those financial habits really early on when you first start making money, so that it doesn't even become something you think about. It's kind of just factored into the way you live your life and how you manage your monthly salary. And I've been doing this throughout my 20s, and I will continue doing it through my 30s, 40s, and 50s. But I think it's just really set me up for success in the future. And don't get me wrong, it's also about spending money in your 20s as well. It's about being responsible with how much money you're both spending and investing. So I'm not suggesting, put all your money in investing and spend no money on kind of living life and enjoying yourself. That's not the point here. The point is just to start getting into those habits of saving a percentage or investing a percentage of your money so that you can both enjoy your life and actually protect yourself and give yourself some money to use in the future as well. Next up is the Kindle. Now, I actually got this fairly late into my 20s, around 26 or 27, but it's kind of transformed the way that I think about and interact with reading. Now, before I used to have a big library of books in my bedroom that took up a lot of space, and honestly, I read a book once, I put it on there, and then it just gathered dust for many months. But this Kindle has, as I said, transformed the way I think about reading in two ways. One, it's just allowed me to read anywhere at any time, be it on the train, on my bed, in the living room sofa, wherever, even out and about. Just because it's so versatile and it's rugged, you can just chuck it in a bag or even just put it in a coat pocket, and the battery lasts forever as well. So you don't even have to think about charging it. But it's just like a really versatile device that's allowed me to read wherever and whenever I want. And the other reason I'd say it's really transformed my reading experience is that it's introduced me to a kind of different type of books, and I'm reading different types of things that I wasn't previously. Now, before I was just kind of going into Waterstones and W.H. Smith and just, picking up like the popular books or the common books or the ones that they had featured and kind of reading them. But, using the Amazon store and looking at the suggested books they offer and just exploring all of the books that they have available on the Amazon store has allowed me to open up to a whole different set of genres of books that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise read. And I found murder mystery now one of my favorite genres of reading. I never used to read that type of book, but I love the escapism of going into another world, learning about some new characters, there being jeopardy, and trying to solve the crime. I found this really, really interesting. So let me know down below what some of your favorite genres of books are. But yeah, the Kindle has been fabulous for me, and I definitely can continue to use it throughout my 30s. So if you haven't got one and you love reading or you want to start reading, definitely pick yourself up one of these Kindles. So next up is a fairly obvious one, but that is a laptop or a phone. And the reason why I've got a laptop on a phone here, I'm sure many of you guys probably already have one. You're probably watching this on a laptop or phone. But the reason why I think it's so important to purchase in your 20s is because they've become so versatile at enabling you to do anything you want to do. Whether you're a creative, whether you're an artist, whatever it might be, these devices now have the capabilities to allow you to do anything that you want. I use this for content creation, to edit videos, to script videos, all of that type of stuff. These were things that I weren't able to do on my phone, for example, when I started in my 20s, but they've become so powerful that you can literally do anything with them. And obviously, pretty much everyone has one now, but how you use the phone and a laptop, everyone has their own specific use cases. But it's just it's one of those things now that just doesn't ever leave you, and you can't ever imagine your life without. But just having a good laptop and phone, one that you can use and one that you can feel confident in doing whatever you need to do on it on, is honestly just the biggest life changer you can have in your 20s. And my final favorite purchase of my 20s is one of these. This is a physical journal. As I talked about with the camera, one of the things that I've become a lot more intentional about throughout my 20s is about how I capture memories and thoughts and feelings and experiences. And a camera is one way to physically do that through photos. But a journal, in particular a physical journal, is a great way to get those thoughts down in pen and paper, to basically get them out of here and get them down on paper, which frees up a lot more mental space here, which you can use for good rather than for bad, which is what my brain does a lot of the time. And so getting them down on a piece of paper really helps free up some space up here. I've actually moved, though, in my 20s from a physical journal into a digital journal, just because I found that sometimes I don't necessarily always have this or another journal on me, and it's easier just to write things down, on Notion, which is what I use to journal, because I can index stuff, and also I can just search for stuff and just revisit stuff a lot more easily than I could with a physical journal. But however works best for you, physical or digital, having a way to journal what's going on in your life, the experiences you have, the feelings you have, how you've grown and matured throughout your 20s, and just writing that all down to either look back in on the future or just use it as a dumping ground to get things out of your brain. However you decide to use a journal, it is one of my favorite things that I've started doing throughout my 20s and had a big impact on my mental health and just like how I think about things as well. Getting things down on paper has helped with that massively. So if you don't already have a journal, or you haven't already started journaling, I highly recommend it. Whether you've recently started earning money or whether you've been earning money for a long period of time, spending money on things is probably one of the most joyous things we can do in our 20s. And so if you want to pick up some habits and things that you can do with your paycheck on a monthly basis, whether it be your first or whether you've been earning money for a long period of time, you want to check out my video here where I talk about some tips and tricks of things to do with your paycheck on a monthly basis. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.